Well, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Christian Brock. I'm the Senior Advisor for an organization known as Elected Officials to Protect America. We'd like to welcome you to our press conference calling on federal action to restore clean energy funding and protecting families from extreme heat and rising bills. I thought I'd start off today by telling a joke about my experience in this extreme heat. But after learning that just this year alone, there has been over 300 heat-related deaths in Maricopa County, extreme heat is no laughing matter. We need to implement sound, comprehensive solutions to protect the people of Arizona, and our state and federal leaders need to continue investing in clean energy to mitigate the dangers caused by extreme heat. Arizona is on the front lines of both clean energy innovation and the deadly climate crisis impacts. Tempe's clean energy climate initiatives make the city a welcoming and safe environment for residents and businesses. About a year ago, we were honored to be here to host another press conference in conjunction with Mayor Woods and his team at City Hall, where they outlined the work that the city is taking and undertaking to protect the people in this beautiful city from the dangers of climate crisis. Thank you, Mayor Woods, once again for joining us. Hopefully we'll be able to have dinner this evening. We're here today to thank the city and to demonstrate how solar is a natural fit for all cities in Arizona. This library is a model example for the Southwest, providing more than 70% of the complex's power through solar energy. That is amazing. Tempe has come a long way to protect the people in this city, but actions by the current federal administration are holding back progress while putting people and their communities at high risk across the country, in Arizona and across the country. People need the security of knowing the federal government is working to serve their interests or the interests of the people and not their own. The federal government's biggest climate investment in history, a bill known as the Inflation Reduction Act, created 900 new factories across America, representing 400,000 clean energy jobs. In just 1 year investment, the manufacturing structure rose by a staggering 54%. The law set aside $370 billion to provide clean energy and reduce greenhouse gas emissions. By the end of 2024, 60 gigawatts of clean energy or electricity capacity to the grid had been developed by manufacturers in the US. Clean energy is also the fastest and cheapest form of energy for installation, from which you can actually see savings almost immediately. From some of the climate investment funds have been taken away, were specifically designed for environmental justice, low-income communities that were hit the hardest by the reduction of calling back those funds. This summer, the majority of the $156,120,000 for the Solar for All grant was rescinded for Arizona, and other federal funding for clean projects have stopped as well. As you can see, the library shows, as you came in, you noticed the canopy, the parking canopy of solar panels. And you can see the library shows how successful solar energy for the state by abundance of the sun, to take away the funding that would help disadvantaged people get relief from electric bills during the heat wave is unconscionable. As an Air Force veteran, I know we're here to protect all Americans, and the federal government needs to do the same. But even the EPA, or Environmental Protection Agency, has been stripped of its core mission. Now Arizona will not be able to meet its clean energy goals, hurting families and businesses, and marginalized communities will suffer the most. Arizona is on the front line of clean energy and innovation, as well as dealing with the deadly impact of climate change. Every community across the state needs federal funding for clean energy initiatives, energy efficient and climate protection, elected officials to protect America, along with the Climate Action Campaign and Vets Forward, which we have two representatives here today, implore the federal government to protect all Americans from the dangers of the climate crisis with clean energy investments and federal agency support and funding. That's why you see this group of esteemed leaders here today. We're here to urge the government to continue investing in clean energy and also to help find solutions, amplify the solutions and actions that are going on at the state and local level. Before I turn the podium over to Mayor Woods, I'd like to announce that Senator Ruben Gallegos, who could not be with us today, did send a video statement, which we'll display now.
Can you just look up?
Thank you to elected officials to protect America and the Climate Action Campaign for the work you're doing for public health, protect our environment, and fight for working families. I'm sorry I couldn't be there in person today. I wanted to take a moment to address the important issue of extreme heat. I want to talk specifically about your work to defend LIHEAP, the Low-Income Home Energy Assistance Program. LIHEAP works by giving qualified low-income families assistance on utility bills, specifically to cover the costs for heating and cooling. And being from Arizona, that really means the cooling. This program is especially important in hot states, where extreme heat makes access to affordable cooling a matter of life and death. In 2023, more than 600,000 families in Arizona qualified for the program, and this year alone, Arizona received more than $30 million in LIHEAP funding. One of the things about LIHEAP that's so great is that this is one of the few programs that literally puts money back in people's pockets. And right now, at a time when families across the country are struggling with utility bills, programs like this will actually make a difference for the families who need it most. Here's the other thing. While states have received their funding for this year, LIHEAP is under attack. As you all know, back in April, Trump administration laid off the entire staff that runs the program. And in next year's budget, Trump is trying to eliminate LIHEAP entirely. That means no one to run the program, less financial relief to keep people safe in the next 3 years. Without LIHEAP, too many families will be unable to afford the utility bills and will be left without AC, even in our 115-degree weather or worse. And that's extremely dangerous. I've been fighting these cuts every step of the way because I know leaving this program unstaffed is unacceptable and dangerous. We actually need to increase our support for programs like these, not cut them. I've been trying to reform the LIHEAP program both in the House and Representatives and in the Senate. So I've introduced the LIHEAP Parity Act to reform the formula that determines how much LIHEAP aid each state gets, so it doesn't unfairly disadvantage hot weather states like Arizona. For example, in 2023, less than 5% of eligible households in Arizona received LIHEAP assistance with cooling, compared to places like Michigan, where 90% of eligible households got assistance with their heating. That goes to a broader problem, not just in LIHEAP, but in many federal programs and resources. That extreme heat is not treated as an emergency, it is. Extreme heat kills more people every year than floods, hurricanes, and tornadoes combined. And heat deaths are continuing to grow year after year. But because we don't call it a disaster, communities can't access the resources they need to fight it. That's why I introduced the Extreme Heat Emergency Act to make extreme heat a federally recognized disaster, so that communities can qualify for federal disaster assistance and won't have to drain their budgets trying to keep people safe. I also introduced the Excess Urban Heat Mitigation Act, which creates a grant program to get funding directly to communities for solutions to extreme heat, like planting more trees for shading, shaded bus stops, or installing roofs that actually reflect sunlight instead of trapping it in. Because look, extreme heat and high temperatures, these are the threats. We need to take them seriously. That includes programs and funding at the federal level to help people combat it and keep costs down. At the end of the day, it's about keeping people safe. So I'm going to keep fighting until programs that protect Arizonans from the effects of extreme heat, like LIHEAP, are protected, expanded, and funded at the levels families in Arizona need and deserve. So thank you again for all the work you're doing on this issue. I'm glad to have partners like you in this fight. I look forward to continuing to work together.
Thank you. I'm sure you'll join me in thanking Senator Gallego and for his leadership and his words of encouragement and work that he's doing on the behalf of Arizonans. With that, I'd like to turn it over to Mayor Woods.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Well, good morning. I'm Tempe Mayor Corey Woods and appreciate you all attending and for those watching at home. So here at our Tempe Library Complex, both solar panels on the south and west sides now provide about 71% of the building's energy needs. And that's just one example. Across the city, Tempe is invested in 10 solar sites, adding up to 6.1 megawatts of clean energy. Altogether, those systems provide about 26% of the energy used in all city buildings. But the benefits go beyond electricity. Solar reduces the urban heat island effect, helps keep our energy costs stable, and moves us closer to our carbon neutrality goal. This work reflects Tempe's long-term commitment to clean energy, and we're going to continue to build on this foundation to bring even more renewable power into our community. Energy efficiency lowers energy use and reduces household energy bills, helping families save for other essential needs. It also strengthens grid resilience. By reducing energy demand, or electricity demand, I should say, we can help keep the grid stable and be ready to help support future economic growth. And the benefits are environmental and personal as well. Fewer carbon emissions mean cleaner air, and efficiency upgrades help keep people safer and more comfortable at home during times of extreme heat. We're also making energy efficient improvements more accessible through our mobile home retrofit program. One senior on a fixed income shared with me that he checks his SRP app daily. And after the retrofit, he saw his energy use cut in half. This program is funded by the Department of Energy through the bipartisan infrastructure law, with up to $25,000 dedicated per home. That allows us to retrofit at least 12 homes and potentially more depending on project costs. So far, work has been completed fully on 2 homes, and residents have already told us that they're feeling very comfortable with the improvements. We're also in the city of Tempe part of a larger, broader statewide effort. Through the Governor's Office of Resiliency, Arizona secured a $156 million EPA grant to expand access to solar. This funding supports both rooftop solar for both residential and multifamily housing, rural and tribal solar, and aids in workforce development to upskill solar workers for installation and maintenance. But unfortunately, the program was terminated by the EPA in August of 2025. But the goals created by this program are going to continue to help us shape all future efforts. Now, I know our next speaker is going to talk quite a bit about some of the challenges that happen when the federal government, frankly, terminates these programs that allow us to help people in Arizona and across the city of Tempe. But I'm going to turn this back over to Christian so we can introduce our next speaker, who is my current state senator, as well as a former colleague of mine on the Tempe City Council. So thank you again for being here, and I'll turn it back over to Christian.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As the mayor mentioned, you can see how Tempe is a leader here in Arizona. And I'd like to introduce State Senator Lauren Kuby.
Kuby.
I like the quarterback.
I'm a quarterback for energy.
There you go. There you go. Well, step up.
Thank you so much, Christian. Good morning. Thank you for all being here. And I represent Legislative District 8, which is Tempe, part of Scottsdale, Mesa, Phoenix, and the entirety of the Salt River Pima Maricopa Indian community. And I'm so proud to be here, having been a former council member, knowing that in 2018, we passed a 100% renewable energy goal by 2035. So Tempe leads the way. Continue that, Mr. Mayor. I'm so proud. So over the past 8 months, the Trump administration has rolled back one energy policy after another, sending shockwaves across the country. Arizona, the sunniest state in the nation, is no exception. And the one big, ugly, terrible bill is poised to drive utility costs even higher for every working family in Arizona. So here in Arizona, we see the ripple effects of federal rollbacks. Last month, Arizona Public Service, our state's largest utility, monopoly utility, walked away from its clean energy commitments. Instead, APS has pledged to burn coal until at least 2038 and build more fossil gas plants. Just so think about that. I want you to really think about that. In the year 2025, when solar plus battery storage is the cheapest electricity in history, the International Energy Association 5 years ago said we crossed the Rubicon. It is the cheapest form of electricity in history. APS is doubling down on the most expensive and the most polluting fossil fuels. And they're not doing it out of necessity. Last year, the parent company of APS, Pinnacle West, cleared $600 million in profits. We're talking profits. Yet they're aiming to kneecap Arizona families with rate hikes. They're looking for a 14% rate hike this year. It was 8% the year before, 8% the year before. That's a 30% rate increase in 3 years. So at the same time, there's been a mirror action. The Arizona Corporation Commission, the most important office no one's ever heard of, it's the elected body charged with regulating utilities in the public interest. It also has abandoned its responsibilities. Under Chris Mays' leadership in 2006, Arizona was an early adopter of clean energy goals. But last month, APS voted to rescind their goal. Arizona will soon be one of the few states in the nation with no clean energy goal at all. Just last week, the commission went even further, gutting our statewide energy efficiency standards. Despite opposition from health organizations and consumer groups and communities, the decision makes no sense because energy efficiency is one of the cheapest forms of energy. It's one of the most effective tools to reduce demand and save money for ratepayers. It's been shown and proven that for every dollar invested in energy efficiency, we get back $4. So it really truly makes no sense. It lowers bills. We see resulting fewer power plants and healthier communities. So you will hear commissioners justify ditching clean energy plans and hiking prices. You'll hear this from APS as well. And they'll point to something that is true. So there's a ballooning energy demand from data centers. But they're ignoring the market realities and the external costs of fossil fuels. That's probably my phone, I'm so sorry. Instead of pushing innovation, they're propping up old, expensive technologies. So meanwhile, the state continues to hand out tax exemptions to those same data centers, right? We're giving tax exemptions at the state and sometimes city level. That costs Arizona taxpayers $19 million a year, those tax exemptions. $19 million a year. Think what we could do with $19 million. That takes away from schools, it takes away from public health. We know we have budget woes that we're going to be facing. So left unchecked, these data center facilities threaten our air quality, our climate, and our precious water supplies. They are enormous consumers of water. But with thoughtful policies, with proactive policies, we could actually drive investment in innovative, clean energy resources while strengthening our grid. It's a choice. It's a choice that we're making. And right now, Arizona leaders are making the wrong choice. So this month has marked, as I said, a massive step backward for Arizona's energy future. I can't believe it's not more of a story, what all the compounding impacts that we're hearing from the federal rollbacks and now filtering into Arizona. I was on the phone the other day with a friend, and I was discussing all these setbacks, very intense and sort of impassioned conversation. And when I hung up, my 2.5-year-old granddaughter, Rory, she was sensing my worry, and she looked up at me and said, "Lala, are you happy?" It broke my heart. And I said, of course I'm happy when I look at your sweet little face. But I couldn't help wondering, how will these decisions affect her life? How will they infect the lives of her children? That's why we're here, right? We're here for our children and our grandchildren. So emboldened by these federal rollbacks, Arizona's monopoly utilities and the Corporation Commission are making reckless choices for consumers. Choices that mean higher utility bills, higher costs, higher prices, dirtier air for our communities, a less stable climate for our children and our grandchildren. Let's be clear, it doesn't have to be this way. We can take action. Instead of ensuring record profits for corporate shareholders, we can act to actually protect every working family in Arizona and all the utility customers. So with bold, forward-looking policies, we can safeguard the public health. We can lead the nation. We can lead the nation in building a clean energy economy. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Next up, I'd like to introduce our state rep, Nancy Gutierrez from District 18.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Thank you for being here. I am Nancy Gutierrez. I serve District 18 in Tucson, Arizona, and I also serve as the Assistant Minority Leader in the Arizona State House. And I'm a public school teacher. So I'm here to talk about climate effect in a different lens, the lens that really affects our schools, our children, and our teachers. This year, for the first time, I received dozens of emails from teachers telling me that their classrooms, not in Phoenix, but in northern Arizona, were over 85 degrees at the beginning of the school year in August. Northern Arizona temperatures have been on the rise in the past several years. Many of those buildings don't even have air conditioning because they haven't needed it in the past. But now, because of global warming and climate change, they get hot. These classrooms are sweltering, and there is no real way to cool them. This is no way to begin a successful school year and will cost the state an incredible amount to remedy this for the next school year. Personally, I have started my school year in Tucson, Arizona, several times with no air conditioning. And I will tell you that it is impossible to teach 30 students in a classroom with no windows, with no air conditioning. It is suffocating at 90 degrees inside to try and hold the attention of students and to even feel well and healthy myself. It's not okay. And it takes, complaining and complaining and complaining not because the districts don't care, but because they lack the resources to have fully functioning air conditionings and to have the staff to go around and fix them. So you just have to wait in your turn. And this year was no exception. Several of my colleagues were telling me that they started the year with no air conditioning. This year, we also saw districts around Phoenix having to change their transportation routes and eligibility because of such extreme temperatures. Here outside of Phoenix, a student was walking home in 112-degree weather, and she passed out after school, and then got third-degree burns on her body because when she was found, she was laying on the ground. We know that the ground is sweltering as well. So now that school district had to broaden their area of who they pick up for school. So kids who would be eligible to walk, and that would be a great thing to have students walking to school, now are unable to do so with a cost to the district. Students are unable to go outside for recess and play. We know students and teachers all need that recess break for various reasons. I'm a PE teacher. We have to modify what we teach because we can't take kids out after 12 noon and be on the field. It's just too hot. We have heat-related illnesses because of it. School sports and band programs can't function like they always have because of this extreme heat. We must address this now. Our students, teachers, and schools are suffering the consequences from our inaction and inability to trust the scientific proof that we can make this better. We can't afford the costs to our districts, and we certainly can't afford to expose our students to unsafe heat. And I would just say the time is now. Our votes matter. When you're looking at spots like Corporation Commission, your state representatives, and your US representatives, we're all up for election in 2026. So make sure you know who you're voting for and that they believe that climate change is real and that they will take action to do the right thing. Thank you.
Thank you. Up next, I'd like to introduce State Representative Aaron Márquez, also a former fellow veteran. So please, Aaron. Thank you.
Thank you, Christian. Thank you to all of our speakers that are here today and all of you in attendance in person and online. I want to highlight Leader Gutierrez's point about schools. In addition to serving as a state representative for Central Phoenix, I represent the Phoenix Union High School District as a governing board member. And just last week, we had the air conditioning go out in one of our schools, and that really comes down to a lack of funding from the state in terms of maintaining this equipment to keep our schools cool and safe. And so we had to cancel school for an entire day. And so the learning loss associated with heat in Arizona is a very real thing. So to start, I just want to say good morning to everybody. Arizona families are on the front lines of climate crisis. We feel it every day, from droughts that drag on for years, to dust storms, to flooding rains, to deadly heat waves. Just this summer, more than 400 of our neighbors in Maricopa County are suspected to have died from extreme heat. Think about that. Grandparents, mothers and fathers, 400 lives lost, even children. And no family in America should ever have to choose between paying the power bill or staying cool enough to survive. Now, here's the truth. Arizona is leading, and we've shown that's possible right here in Tempe with the work of Mayor Corey Woods and Senator Kuby. Solar panels at this public library provide 70% of its power, and they show what happens when we invest in the future. We've got sunshine, we've got talent, we've got the drive to lead the nation. And when we invest in clean energy, it lowers bills, it creates jobs, it strengthens our security. It gives families peace of mind. But instead of helping us move forward, this administration, the Trump administration, has tried to hold us back. They rescinded a $156 million Solar for All grant for Arizona. That program would have cut energy bills by 20% for families, trained workers for good paying jobs, delivered clean power to communities that need it most. Every dollar taken away is a dollar stolen from the health, the security, and prosperity of Arizona families. Now, I've said this before, as an Army veteran, I swore an oath to defend this country from threats foreign and domestic. And today, the climate crisis is exactly that, a threat to our security. The Pentagon calls it a threat multiplier because rising heat and scarce resources drive conflict and instability around the world. And here at home, Arizonans have the right to clean air, safe water, and protection from extreme weather. Agencies like the EPA, NOAA, and FEMA, they are the front lines of defense, and they need to be fully funded. They need to be fully staffed, and with clean energy and sustainable infrastructure, we can keep our people safe and make America energy secure. That's why we need Washington to act. We need the Trump administration to act. We need Representatives Ciscomani and Schweikert to act to restore clean energy funding, to protect families from rising costs, to make sure our communities are safe, because this is about more than protecting our planet. It's about protecting our people. Arizona is ready to lead, but we cannot do it alone. We need Washington to have our backs. And if we stand together, if we stay focused, if we choose to act with the urgency that this moment demands, we can build a future that's not just cleaner, but also safer and stronger and more secure for all of us. Thank you.
So you've heard us talk about clean energy, solar for all, and there may be questions as to what that is and how can the average or everyday Arizonan get access to this. Up next, I'd like to introduce Jess White, who is with the Solar United Neighbors, to speak to that issue.
Thank you, Christian. Oh, speaking of heat, using a cardigan in September in Arizona was definitely a choice. But yeah, so my name is Jess White. I am joining you today with this amazing panel of speakers from Solar United Neighbors as our Arizona Program Associate. And if you haven't heard of Solar United Neighbors, we are a 501c3 nonprofit, and our work is really centered around representing the interests and the needs of solar supporters and owners across the state. But to expand on that a little bit, our theory of change is threefold. And so we work to help people to go solar, and we do that through free education. We help people join together, which we do through co-ops, which is basically a bulk purchasing model with all of your neighbors, helping it to be more affordable. Generally, it's about a 20% discount we've heard in the past, and that makes it a little bit more accessible for folks who might not otherwise be able to get it, especially in light of the 30% tax credit, which has been taken away at the end of this year. And then we help people to fight for their energy rights. And we do that through a lot of policy work. But really at the cornerstone of what we do is we try to increase access to rooftop solar, and we work towards an equitable energy system at the heart of it all. And so I'm here today to emphasize that federal solar investments make a real difference for Arizona families and businesses and put money back into Arizonans' pockets while strengthening our state's economy. So for example, we have the Vasquez family. They received a partial grant through our organization, which helped them to offset some of the costs of going solar. And that, in addition to that now removed 30% tax credit, or at least to be removed, allowed them to offset their costs so much that they'll pay off their system in 3 years. And they said that in their first utility bill that they received after having the solar installation, they saw a cut in half of what they'd been paying before. And that of course had a very real aspect on their budget and their ability to pay other bills and to maybe even have some luxury expenditures, right? Isn't that the dream, the American dream? And so what our organization's grant did for the Vasquezes is what Solar for All program would deliver to almost 11,000 families across the entire state of Arizona, from Page all the way to Bisbee. And so it would be a federal program implemented by the state that would dramatically increase access to rooftop solar for low and moderate income families, as well as creating quality, well-paid local jobs, which are, whew, goosebumps, 3 words that we can all get behind, right? And while driving utility costs down for everyone, not just the folks who own solar themselves. And so this program's $156 million investment would have yielded $165 million in savings over the course of 25 years. And so that is $9 million that would have been kept in the pockets of Arizonans across the state that could have been kept in our local economy. And just for reference, that's about a 6% return on investment. I wish I was getting a 6% return on investment in all of my investments. So this program would also direct millions to rural and tribal communities, as the mayor had mentioned. And so as an example of that, the Hopi Nation received their own $25 million grant so that could have helped about 900 households to have access to solar and battery systems. And so that would contribute to their energy sovereignty and affordability, which this proposed Solar for All cancellation has clawed back. And then more than that, Solar for All doesn't just provide power to communities, it delivers dignity, safety, and economic development. Cutting these federal solar investments would primarily harm families who need monthly energy savings the most, our frontline communities across the state. Not to mention, solar access also increases resilience against extreme heat by offsetting high cooling costs specifically when they peak in summer. Just last month, all 3 of Arizona's largest utilities, which is APS, TEP, and SRP, all saw record-breaking peak demands on August 6th, and then, not to outdo themselves, the following day, they had another record-breaking peak demand. And so that just really shows that as these temperatures increase and we crank up our ACs trying to compensate, this strain on our infrastructure is only slated to continue. And this means we need to be thinking ahead and making the grid resilient now, because tomorrow might be too late. These initiatives aren't abstract. They represent tangible relief for hardworking Arizonans struggling all across the state with rising costs and rising temperatures at the same time. And Solar for All offers a minimum of 20% savings on their utility bills, enabling them to take control of their energy while strengthening our local economy. These benefits are so clear, in fact, and compelling that these solar initiatives have received bipartisan support historically, as Republicans and Democrats recognize that energy affordability and local job creation serve all of their constituents regardless of political identity. And at the end of the day, for me, I joined Solar United Neighbors not because I'm passionate about solar energy, although I am, but because I'm deeply passionate about people. And the reality is solar is an incredible tool that helps to both power and empower communities across the state. And I realize that our federal representatives are listening to somebody who they've never met at a podium from an organization that they may never have heard of either. But more than that, as an Arizonan, and beyond that, as somebody who is perhaps a frustrated but still proud American, I hope that you're not doing it because some person asked you to do it, but because it's the right thing to do. And it's something that can benefit people of all backgrounds, across the entirety of Arizona and in fact, the nation as well. So thank you for the opportunity to speak. I'll see you back to you, Kristen.
Thank you, Jess. And she just hit that right on the head. We're talking solar for all, energy, but what we're really talking about are families in our communities. And to continue to kind of highlight that work, I'd like to introduce, just had to blank, Chanel Powe, who is a former Balsz School District board member.
Thank you.
Had to make you laugh.
Okay, thank you so much, everyone, for being here. Christian, thank you for the introduction. EOPA, thank you for partnering with the state of Arizona to have this serious discussion. You know, it's no secret that Arizona is getting hotter and hotter. Phoenix is now facing prolonged extreme heat, and Arizonans are dying from preventable deaths in their own homes. Families are being forced to choose between rent, AC repairs, slumlords, and basic cooling costs. People are simply just trying to survive. They are trying to stay alive in the hottest city in the country. Each summer continues to grow hotter and hotter, especially for Black, Brown, and Indigenous communities who bear the brunt of our climate crisis. With federal cuts from the Environmental Protection Agency, even clean drinking water is under threat. Arizona has already had some of the poorest air quality in our nation, impacting these communities, same as the global majority, at 3 times the rate of other communities. This is more about climate. This is about justice. This is about the lack of access to fresh fruits and vegetables. This is about the lack of access to fresh, clean drinking water and things that we call food deserts. Elevated arsenic being in our water and fluoride is, it impacts these same communities. And it also impacts our tribal lands, which is unacceptable. Communities are already denied healthcare. And instead of true protections, families are being left with the patchwork responses when clean drinking water and safe air should be guaranteed rights. Meanwhile, industries need to be held accountable. I'm deeply concerned about how Phoenix Brownfield Lands Program is under threat because it continued to manage and it was funded through the EPA. Pollution going unchecked will continue to hurt some of our poorest children. Elders who are suffering from chronic diseases are also at risk. School-aged children are developing asthma or worsening during these existing conditions just by walking to school or even playing outside. Arizonans have the right to have safe climate, breathe clean air, and to drink clean and safe water, and to be shielded from the dangers of our extreme heat. Yet in 2024, only 8% of families qualify for the LIE heat that low-income energy assistance program received, and that's just unacceptable. We cannot continue to stand by idly. We must demand bold action and hold our industries accountable. And they need to make those equitable investments to protect some of our most vulnerable. Arizona Gutierrez said into an oven. And that interferes with the child's learning, right? But in the US, students are more affected disproportionately from low income and from families of the global majority. South Phoenix has had to carry the burden of environmental racism for generations. Our communities are lined up in the industrial parks. I know because guess what? I live over there and had no idea that our air quality was so horrible and a lot of our industry was going unchecked. These are filled with waste facilities that has toxic landfills, and they're all intentionally zoned south of the city. Families and working families have to deal with the consequences of policies that put profit over people. Breathing in toxins from these facilities and these landfills that should have never been placed near their homes in the beginning. Now with the federal EPA protections being under attack, the stakes could not be any higher. Rolling back these federal safeguards means that less accountability and more pollution. and more harm to the various communities that have already been labeled as hazardous land. That speaks volumes about how deep this problem actually runs. This is why we must continue to raise our voices, strategize, and organize among one another, and demand environmental justice. We can't allow South Phoenix and other parts of our community or any other community of the global majority to be treated as a dumping ground. Our health, our children, and our future is on the line. Extreme heat conditions continue. We need to think about the solutions for some of these extreme heat conditions. It is important that we continue to amplify these concerns to the U.S. representatives, as well as our local and municipal elected officials. We need our junior and senior senator to fight like hell for Arizonans when it comes to these funding cuts. We must fully support them and be fully supportive from the outside as they work inside to work towards mitigating these injustices. As a community, we can do more by identifying and helping families and by providing resources, taking them to clean water refill stations, which are not in a lot of these local communities. We need to be able to have and share opportunities with them to be able to help meet their nutritional needs and have access to fresh fruits and vegetables. And we need to expand our resources to make sure that we have safe cooling and heating options. It's hot. And as residents, we are feeling it. We are seeing unhoused communities come and sleep in front of our apartment complexes and at our bus stops in this extreme weather that can cause extreme health concerns. We need to provide educational and expand access to affordable, supportive housing year-round as a fiscal priority. Together, we must ensure that our communities, including our most marginalized communities, like our Black, Brown, and Indigenous communities, are not left behind in the fight for climate resilience and survival. Thank you.
Thank you, Chanel. Thank you for that. As you speak about our communities, one of the communities as a veteran I'm most passionate about is our veterans. And I was, again, honored to have that forward with Representative Márquez and Ricardo here to support us or to bring that to highlight. So Ricardo, if you would, please.
Sorry, I don't normally read my speeches, but I wanted to be very clear about what's going on these days. Good morning, my name is Ricardo Reyes. I am a Marine Corps veteran, and I'm also the executive director of Vets Forward. And when I was in uniform, my mission was very clear. We had to defend democracy, defend our way of life, and ensure that the people that we love back home were safe. But defending democracy doesn't end when you take off the uniform, it continues. And here at home, how we fight to make sure that our families are secure, that are protected, and given a fair chance to thrive. That's why I'm here today. We fought to defend our democracy, our way of life, one where children and their families are secure, knowing that federal policies are here to protect them. Everyone deserves an equal opportunity to thrive in our great nation. But this progress falters when we cannot rely on the government to ensure clean air, clean water, and protection from a climate that's growing more and more dangerous every year, especially in places like Arizona, where we put a whole city in a desert. For me, this is personal because I grew up in a low middle class family here in Phoenix, Arizona. I walked or rode the bus to school every day in this blistering heat. And I worked alongside my father and my brothers in my dad's landscaping company. So I know firsthand how unforgiving this heat can be. I lived it, and I am concerned about the families who have to deal with it now, 10, 15 years later, when it's much worse. Here in Arizona, we feel climate change in our bones. Summers that used to be hot are now life-threatening. My own son, a year ago, fell to heat exhaustion just out exercising with his wrestling team. So let's be honest, all right? This is something that's life or death. Those that are paying the price for our lack of investment in climate are seniors, are our children, are our poor and marginalized communities. And let's be honest, families are also feeling this in their wallet. Rising energy costs hit the hardest when working people who are just trying to keep the AC on to survive this heat. That's why programs like the Solar for All aren't just about clean energy. They're about dignity, affordability, and security to lower bills and create jobs that give us independence. Not just from foreign oil, but from the crushing weight of extreme energy costs. Let's also be clear that this isn't about politics. It doesn't matter whether you believe in climate change or not. The Department of Defense has done extensive studies on climate change because it shapes military readiness. It shapes national security. Why? Because rising waters affect our because rising waters affect our naval bases. Because droughts destabilize regions and extreme heat strains supply chains and disaster response. The Pentagon sees climate change as a threat multiplier because that's exactly what it is. So if our armed forces are planning for it, why aren't we here at home? Clean energy investments are patriotic investments. They protect our people, strengthen our economy, and reduce the national security risks that come with climate chaos. The laws and policies that brought these investments forward have already helped to grow Arizona's economy and protect our environment. Rolling them back is not just short-sighted, it's dangerous, and it will cost lives. When I served as a sergeant in the Marines, we were taught that failing to prepare for threats puts lives at risk. Climate change is no different. Every year we delay, the threat grows larger, the costs grow higher, and the casualties increase. This is a fight that we cannot afford to lose. So today I stand with these Arizona leaders, calling on the federal government to restore clean energy funding, to protect families, to protect families from the extreme heat and the rising bills, to live up to the promise that in America, everyone deserves an equal opportunity to thrive. As a Marine veteran, as someone who grew up working class, as a father, and as an Arizonan, I'm telling you, clean energy is about survival. Clean energy is about security, and clean energy is about freedom. And those are all things worth fighting for. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, you would think that, hey, this clean energy, solar for all is a win-win. So why are we here calling for the federal government to restore the funding to that? Again, we're fighting for Arizonans and Americans across the country. So I'm sure that many of you have some questions. And I think, Mayor, you have another engagement. Oh, you can. So if you have any questions for the mayor, I'll put an opportunity for the mayor to take questions first, and then we'll take questions both from the audience here and online. No? Bueller? Come on.
Thank you, and I guess this question is for everybody. How can we monetize the benefits to push our energy providers towards clean energy?
I'm happy to answer that. And we have monopolies, and in the case of APS, their fundamental responsibility is to their shareholders, but they are given this monopoly power, and they're in the public interest. We should be regulating them and making it so we have affordable energy and energy prices for our customers, both commercial and residential class. What we do have in the case of SRP, we see a disproportionate cost going to the residential class and disproportionately low costs going to the commercial class, for these data centers. As far as monetizing, they have what's something called stranded assets, right? We have a stranded asset like an old coal plant that's more expensive to operate than a new solar plant plus battery storage. They have to find a way to get that money back. And that's why we had this bill in the legislature called securitization that was a bill that will really delay the closing down of coal plants. And we will have monthly charges on our accounts for many, many decades to pay for that, which is, antithetical to the point that you're making. So incentivizing, we need to build resilience into our systems. Look at Texas, how many years ago when they had the disaster in the winter and Ted Cruz flew off to Cancun. What thrived, what stayed constant? It was solar. It's resilient form of energy. And let's use the argument of the data centers. We have data centers that are ballooning with their energy needs. Well, all the more reason to have more distributed solar on those data center factory roofs and allow more resilience built throughout the system with distributed solar. So, I would say that the monopoly utilities, their main interest is for their shareholders. But the Arizona Corporation Commission represents the people. They should all be consumer advocates, and they should be looking at the people's interests. As Chanel said, my colleague with EOPA, and I'm so glad to have this opportunity. I'm in the leadership program with EOPA. It should be people over profits.
Questions?
I just have a comment, not a question. Something that was probably more prominent, maybe 10, 15 years ago, was something called the water energy nexus. You guys familiar with that? So what that research was about, even here locally, was that if you have, just take for example, a coal-fired powerhouse. They're using coal, but where does that energy really come from? They use turbines for steam generation. One of the big things about it is that they're using water. And so that water, even in the cooling towers, they're using water. So I think it might be appropriate to make more of an emphasis on what impact that has on our water, even from a state level, looking at, is there a way that we could charge them in their work that they're doing to actually use water for coal generation, for energy generation using coal. As far as, we hear stuff now about going back to uranium mining. You may or may not be familiar with the issues in northern Arizona on the Indian reservations, where they're still battling polluted groundwater from uranium mining. So just my comments, I'd like to see more of I think it would be prudent to have more of an emphasis on those two things, because if you just say water quality, it doesn't mean very much to a lot of people. That's it.
Thank you.
I just do want to emphasize that, speaking about water, there's nothing in the ground in Arizona that's more valuable than water. And I think that's part of the big problem that people don't realize. For example, the uranium mining, they're like, oh, we're going to go in there, we're going to get it out. And the San Carlos Apache tribe, right? They just lost a lot of their ground that is sacred to them and that is going to be taken over by a mining company. There's enough water under that land to provide 100 years of water to a city of the size of Mesa. So people have to remember that copper, gold, so there's nothing in the ground in Arizona that's more important than our groundwater. You can't drink gold. You can't eat copper. All right, so we can't survive without our water. So thank you for that. I really appreciate that you mentioned that.
We have an online question for the group. Without federal funding and government protections, what can the state do to protect its people?
You want to
So much. You got the whole day. Let's sit down and talk about what we could do. And what you said, very wise about the water energy nexus. And we think about, for decades, we've extracted resources from northeastern Arizona, from our tribal communities, and we've built our large cities. And a third of those in the Navajo Nation have no access to water or to electricity. They have to sometimes travel 50 miles to haul water. It's unconscionable. And I say it's a stain on the state. It's also a stain on the utilities for not funding the just transition for communities that are shuttering. So I would just add that there's a lot that we can do. And fundamentally, we need to hold the utilities accountable. We have SRP, which is the second largest utility in the state, 3.4% solar in its portfolio. They have a very undemocratic election system. Only 1% of people vote, and the people that do vote have to own land to vote. So there are many changes, democratic reforms we could institute. We have to have the will to do that. And there is much we can do, and we can elect corporation commissioners who represent the people of Arizona and not the utilities.
Can I just add one thing? I absolutely agree with Senator Kuby. However, without that federal funding, Arizona state budget absolutely cannot pick up that funding from the feds. We do not have that funding. We have a 2.5% state income tax. We don't raise the funds to make that budget. So that's why this is so important. If we want LIHEAP, if the feds are not going to continue that program, we absolutely do not have those funds. That's why the federal changes are so important.
Yeah, I would just even add to that, when I think about a lot of our local organizations like CHISPA, like Potential Unlimited and other organizations, some of them are also receiving federal grants. So it's like we may have to take care of ourselves and we're going to have to save ourselves, but that's going to be really hard looking at our municipal budgets in terms of where funding has already been allocated. So it's almost as if it's this grassroots approach to try to stay alive in the Valley of the Sun, which unfortunately is not sustainable.
We have another question from online. Is there hope that the negotiations in DC to stop a potential shutdown over the spending bill will change clean energy investments?
I don't think so. Yeah,
You should always keep hope alive, but
it's not
much.
looking. Well, this speaks to the investment that we need to continue to make in our young people who are coming up with innovative ideas, who are coming up with sustainable ways to, have, energy and really lean into solar and really try to help meet the need. No, it's not being done on a large scale, but it's being done community by community. But again, I implore everyone to look for C3 organizations within your own community who are actually doing the work to help fill in this gap and help Arizona families.
Another online question saying, thank you for the service for the 3 veterans that are up on the stage. As veterans, you've witnessed a situation where climate change has been a threat multiplier. How seriously does the armed forces take climate change?
Yeah, and thank you again to the fellow vets up here with me today. That's absolutely true. If you look at the national security plan produced by the Department of Defense year after year, the Pentagon calls it a climate change, an extreme heat of threat multiplier. I served 2 deployments in Afghanistan. When I was in Afghanistan, the seasons changed the fighting season as well. I think to refer back to the comments of Ricardo, the executive director of Vets Forward, everything we do in the military, for the most part, is thinking about mitigating risk. And so the Army and the Department of Defense built in redundancy across its planning at the strategic level, all the way down to the tactical level, to think about the risks of climate change. And for me, as somebody that's been to a war zone twice, I think it's much more of a wise investment and a cheaper investment in terms of blood and treasure to, on the front end, invest in clean energy as it leads to stability around the world, as opposed to the instability that comes from these challenges in distressed regions throughout the world where we could end up in future conflicts. So it's absolutely imperative that at the state level, whether city council, state legislature, and at the federal level, we continue to invest in clean energy from a national defense strategy. Thank you.
We have one last question from online, directed to the group. If solar for all is not possible, what can local communities do to replace it?
Yes.
So I think community is the real driver here, kind of what Chanel was talking about, empowering young leaders, empowering folks in communities to be leadership. And I think our co-op model is something that, while it can't do the same extent that Solar for All can, it certainly limits some of the need in finances in order to get there. And I think that there has to be some sort of initiative that we could push for as a group, especially with all of these grassroots organizations who are fully aware of the impact and the need for solar in our most frontline communities, where we can start grant initiatives and maybe we can do more fundraising work in that effect, because that's something that we do strive for. But of course, particularly in this current climate, there are limitations to that, but that's not to say that it's insurmountable. And I think that's really where we need to start, is recognizing that the people on the ground and the organizations doing the work locally are where that power can really be centered. And if we don't get that federal funding, then we turn to them because they know their people, they know the needs, and they care. And that's what really matters at the end of the day, is people caring and people doing the right thing and continuing to have faith that other folks will do the right thing, especially when they see it modeled in their own. Hopefully that answered the question.
Thank you. Again, thank you all on behalf of elected officials to Protect America, Climate Action Campaign, Vets Forward, and the fabulous, phenomenal leaders that you see here. I thank you for joining us today for our press conference. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to any of our organizations. You can find us most online. Elected Officials Protect America is EOPA.org, and our communications director is Ramona Cornell DeHoo, who you can connect with for any of the media inquiries. Thank you all for joining us. Have a great day.